How do you overcome resistance? How do you start with creative projects that you've always been putting off? That's what we are going to be seeing in today's video. Let's get started. Hey folks, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Praveen Ramesh, and on this channel we speak about non-fiction books. I speak about lessons that I'm personally learning from non-fiction books, the things that I am implementing, the things that I am failing on, the things that I want to take it forward by learning from these books. I find it immensely useful. I hope you do too. So resistance, right? So until I read this book called The War of Art by Pressfield, I didn't realize how much resistance stops us from putting our creative work out. Pressfield, in this book called The War of Art, speaks about the two lives that we have. So the default life that we are living currently, where we have a job, we have a family, we are doing things and stuff like that, and the unlived life. So the unlived life is the one that's filled with a lot of what if questions. What if I started my creative journey 5 years back? What if I had taken a journalism as my background? Or what if I had started doing this? What if I had spoken to that friend? What if I had just made the first move in that date? And all those sort of things, right? And the things that stop us from living this unlived life is this demon called resistance, right? So resistance, what does it do? So resistance acts as that internal chatter that raises a lot of self-doubt. Let me show you an example. Say you want to start a YouTube channel. Resistance is that internal voice that will tell you, hey, everything that has to be said on a YouTube channel has already been said. Let's say you want to start writing a book. Resistance is that internal voice that will tell you, hey, you're not as good as writing as some of your favorite authors. Let's say you want to start a business. Resistance is that internal voice or internal chatter that tells you that you're not good enough to start up at this point in time. So you get a picture, right, as to how resistance acts as this speed breaker or the blocker between you and your dreams. So Pressfield goes on to say that resistance is the biggest terminator in killing a lot of creative things that we all have to express, because he goes on to say that we all have something creative to say. It could be an art, it could be some form of musical instruments, it could be producing videos, it could be writing, or it could be simply doing something for yourself. It could be cooking, it could be mixology and all those kind of things. But the reason why we all don't get started with things that we really love is resistance. So what are the characteristics of these resistance? It's very fascinating. Author Pressfield kind of describes what resistance looks like. It doesn't have a physical form. Come to think about it, resistance is not something that you're innately born with. It's an internal chatter that you keep having whenever you want to do something. Second thing, it amplifies the self-doubt that you have. When you're normally working on a day, you never think like, am I good enough with writing? Am I good enough with my YouTube journey? Am I good enough with music and all those things? But the moment you want to start creating and putting your work out there, all these self-doubt starts coming in. So that is the second point, where it fills you with a lot of self-doubt. And third one, it's the internal distraction. Resistance is an internal distraction that stops you from doing what you are doing. So have you seen how you always, when you have a creative idea that you want to work on, you're always distracted by even the slightest or smallest of things? It has happened to me multiple times when I wanted to study for an exam, or I wanted to read a particular book where I'm fascinated by a small fly on the wall, or I'm fascinated by how little things in nature work, or at times I'm like, even I want to get started by cleaning my shelf before I start reading and all those things. So resistance is that internal distraction that you constantly have that stops you from doing what you want to do. You might come back and ask me, hey Praveen, what happens when I'm kind of confronted with a lot of resistance? You end up being angry, you end up being frustrated, you end up having a lot of anguish. So what happens when you're filled with resistance? You're always like, oh, I have a lot of things that I could do, I'm not doing, and as a result of which you are very, very, very frustrated. So that brings us to the question of, how can I overcome resistance? So Pressfield calls this a two-pronged approach, right? The embracing aspect and the facing aspect. So we'll get on to it one by one. Embracing resistance. The first step to overcome resistance is to acknowledge that there is going to be resistance whenever you are going to start something creative or something that you always wanted to do. So now that we have embraced, we know that okay, there is this demon that's there that's going to kill my creative project or whatever I'm going to do. The second step is to act on that resistance. So how do I do that? So let's say, let's take my example, right? There is this book called Think Again. I've reviewed this on our channel. For the longest time, I didn't review that book because I was slightly unsure of whether I'll do enough justice, and I was constantly anxious about how will I structure this, the review or the summary of that book. So if I'm facing a lot of these internal resistance, I should probably be picking up that book to review on our channel. Because Stephen Pressfield says, you being anxious about an idea, you being uncomfortable about an idea is a sign that you're really excited about it, and in life you should always do things that you are excited about. So that is the first lesson in ensuring that you embrace. So always pick things where you're slightly uncomfortable and your mind is kind of resisting whatever you want to be doing. So now that we've embraced, what is the second step? The second step is to face the resistance. I think of it like this, right? One, we have a fear board, and then there is a courage board. So the fear board is something that feeds on fear, as with the name, right? So let's say I want to produce that YouTube channel. I'm constantly going to think, maybe I don't have enough things to say. Maybe my book review is not good enough as some of the other established folks. Maybe I'm not gaining enough subscribers. I'm not having enough views as much as the others. So maybe I shouldn't turn up this week and all those things. Whereas the courage board is the one that's going to say, hey, you know what? Today at 10:30 a.m., irrespective of how I feel, I'm going to turn up, shoot the video, put it out. Right? So that's what the courage board, it feeds on confidence, whereas the fear board feeds on, you said it right, the fear. So when you embrace and face your resistance, you can kind of overcome that for that single day. It's not like you've overcome it forever. So the resistance is waiting to come back at you the next day. So irrespective of how you have done today, the next day morning at 10:30 a.m. again you have to turn up, churn out whatever you are doing, and then again repeat it the third day, fourth day, and eventually day after day. And congrats, you would have successfully overcome what the internal demon most of us face, which is resistance. So I really enjoyed this book. In fact, one of my favorite quotes from this book is, don't cheat us of your contribution, give us what you got, is what Stephen Pressfield says, because resistance stops you from doing whatever you are doing. So get started with whatever is that small project that you've had in mind. Overcome resistance, embrace it, face it, and I'm sure you're gonna see a lot of creative things around you once you start doing it. I hope you enjoyed this book review of The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. Until I see you in the next video, this is Praveen Ramesh signing off.